Hi, my name's Chris Caesar. I'm a landscape photographer based out of my studios here in Scrooby. Welcome to this episode 3, autumn, of my series 3, 4 seasons in print series of videos. A series of videos in which I look at 5 pictures per season and try to explain the thoughts or the reasoning behind taking the picture, what it means to me maybe, and then looking at the paper that I've chosen to make the print and trying to give some thoughts on why I chose that particular paper. So everything you're going to see is being printed on the Canson Infinity range of fine art papers. I've used a wide range of papers, matte papers that are textured, smooth and heavily textured. And we've got 3 or 4 sort of gloss media as well, going from Baryta papers down to smooth gloss finishes. Everything's been printed on a Canon Pro-300, which is a superb A3 Plus printer from Canon. It handles all this fine art media with ease, so you can make gallery quality pictures at home of your own work. Some of the major key points of the printer: there's no changeover in the blacks. So if you go from matte paper to shiny paper, it's instant. There's no wasting of ink and sitting around waiting for it to get ready to print on the different, type of surface media. It's got an absolutely fantastic matte black, which works amazingly well with the matte papers in the Canson Infinity range, producing really deep blacks like never seen before. And it's got some other little additions like what's the word? It's got a red cartridge, but it's I can't remember the word. Anyway, it has a red cartridge, which lets it mix colours differently, maybe to give better results, more accurate results when it's trying to match colours, the colours that are on your screen. So everything you're going to see, Canson Infinity Media, Canon Pro-300 printer. So the first picture in the autumn episode 3, is this one. And this is called Rolling Cloud Devil's Staircase. And it's a nice picture. It was made on one of the workshops up in Rannoch Moor, which I run every other year. And during the workshops, on each day, I'll run 1, maybe 2 things that I call masterclass sessions. They take about 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, people will have a little rest and they'll listen to me. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. And on this one, we walked all around here. We're on a little bridge and we looked from this side on the bridge over here, and we saw how the landscape was changing. And there were 2 or 3 angles that worked really well for photographs. But for this exercise, I've picked this one. This is the one where the kind of river runs up straight from the centre, passing some nice foreground interest like this boulder and these lovely sort of grasses here and rough heathery grasses. Then we've got the cottage, and then we've got this lovely shape here with Buccleuch Moor and the Devil's Staircase, and then this fantastic heavy sky that's full of drama with its white clouds that are obviously catching the sun from wherever it is, and then these dark clouds that are in the shade of the sun. So we get a nice image that's got a nice journey, something of interest here, and then some drama. So it was a case of, how did I want to represent this image as a finished print? So I've decided to use the Canson R88, which is, I call it the Rolls Royce of paper, and I've been calling it that since I was introduced to it over a year ago now. It's a lovely paper. It's made on a cylinder mould, which means the fibres are twice as long as you get on a Fourdrinier machine. Fourdrinier machines make most of the fine art papers that we use. But a cylinder mould, it's more like a handmade paper. The fibres go in different directions, whereas on a Fourdrinier they go the same way. So the paper's very stable. It gives this handmade finish. It's a paper, this one's very, very pure white, no optical brighteners, massive achievement from the guys at Canson. So whereas you could use optical brighteners, which are basically bleaching agents to add brightness to a paper, they've achieved it by using, I believe, natural minerals. So everything is inert, nothing's going to change in this paper. Archivability is second to none. But the key thing about it, it's smooth. It's a really, really ultra smooth, pure white matte paper. So if you're looking for a traditional photographic finish, then smooth may come to the front rather than textured. So I've used this smooth matte. Another thing about the paper, it's got quite a high Dmax for a matte paper. So it's got the ability to show rich blacks. And the Pro-300 Canon printer, that matte black ink really is good when you mix it with these kind of papers. I tend to shoot nature, even in monochrome, quite naturally. So for me to show you a really jet black, then it has to exist in nature. And the only time I tend to see that is by a waterfall, where you'll get maybe a little crevice in the rock, and inside the crevice it's quite black. But on a day like this, we're not really going to be introduced to anything that's black, so black won't be in this picture. However, there is plenty of tonal range. So we've got these whites here and some very dark darks going on. And the paper can handle that with ease. And all in all, it produces just a nice, clean image on a matte paper with no reflections. You know, whatever, we've got quite a lot of studio lights in here, no reflections going on. So it's just a nice paper, beautiful paper, that will give you a nice clean finish with no reflections and lots of detail because it's exceptionally smooth. So that's the first picture, Arch 88 paper, rolling cloud at Devil's Staircase, Rannoch Moor. Okay, here's image 2. This is called A Brisk Start, Southwold Pier. I had a trip with some friends for a major birthday. It was my major birthday, so 20 again. And we went to Norfolk for a few days, and then at the end we stayed over one more night, and we just had a little trip round Southwold Pier, that area. So this is Southwold Pier at dawn, and we had a really good morning. It was raining when we got there. It looked like it was going to be a bit of a washout, and then the rain stopped and there was some lovely sunrise colours over the sea. And right at the end, when we're coming back to the car, this is where we got to. The tide was coming in. It was quite turned into, from a really nice garden sunrise, it turned into quite a powerful sky, really. So we got the chance to make this dramatic image almost as a flyaway gesture on the way back to the car. But it's absolutely lovely. I mean, we've got this amazing sky. You can see the power in the sky, and that's sort of borne out by the sort of power of the waves there in the foreground. And you've got this little pier sort of fighting for survival, proudly heading out into the storm. So it's a really nice sort of powerful monochrome image of a seascape. And it was a question of what to print it on. I've converted it to black and white because it was, although we had some nice colours at sunrise, it went a little bit grey. So I thought this will make a fantastic black and white picture. And I've used the paper that perhaps accentuates, you know, tonal range more than any other, which is, again, the Baryta Prestige II. So the Baryta Prestige II, this is the one that's got, you know, quite a nice stiff feel to it, very reassuring in the hand. Obviously, when these things are mounted and, you know, they're put in frames and put on walls, they're just happy to just hang like this forever. I tend to tack them at the top and just let the paper hang freely, because that way, if you can get any sort of atmospheric reaction from the paper and it wants to just expand a little bit, it can. Whereas if you tape it all the way around or fix it all the way around, it can be a problem. I've never really dry mounted images. You certainly wouldn't dry mount a gloss image because that's not going to go well, and I don't really like dry mounting fine art prints either on matte. There's something about extremely high temperatures in these papers that maybe shouldn't be happening, I don't know. So I've always done it this way, and I've never had any problems. I've been selling frame work now for about 20 years, so touch wood, everything seems to be going fine so far. So the papers, all these papers are quite heavy. They do hang very well, and they're very stable. But the result with the Prestige II on this kind of picture is just that, again, I've said it before, it's that ability of it to really accentuate any changes in tone. So whites and blacks and whatever, if you're shooting greens, if you're shooting bluebells in a field, poppies against the blue sky, whatever, if there's any contrast, this paper will just give it a little boost. It's beautiful. So striking, if you're into striking monochromes, as I said recently, then this is a paper to consider. So Baryta Prestige II, and that is the next image in the autumn episode. Here is image 3. This is a little image called The Beach Huts at Wells, Norfolk. So this is another one from my little Norfolk trip for my major birthday last year. And we did get lucky when we went out, to be honest. Everywhere we went, it seemed to turn up. So we went to this lovely place called Wells next to the sea. And there was all these little beach huts. And they went right down here. And it was great fun playing with them. But this is the pre-dawn. Unbelievable. So the pre-dawn was the highlight of the day. This kind of shot, you know, it's really interesting that if you look at this on my website, it won't look like this, because one of the things that's frustrating is when you see a print, this is true, these are the colours, but my website works in sRGB colour space, and sRGB colour space can't do this kind of red. So everything looks a bit weird. So I often wonder how people are supposed to go about picking a picture like this off a website when the colours they're looking at just look a bit different, a bit odd. But if they saw the actual print, they would probably fall in love with it. But anyway, one day, I dare say the world will find a solution to that. But for now, I'm looking at these lovely colours on this print. So we've got this fantastic pre-dawn sky where the sun has managed to catch these clouds from the underneath. Absolutely stunning. And we've got this row of red coming in to meet the row of beach huts. And we've got some sand and a couple of groins here and a little bit more colour up in the top. So all together, it's just a nice warm picture of a beautifully powerful pre-dawn in Norfolk. Now this paper that I've chosen to print this on, it's the first time I've used this in this series. And this is a paper that's, it's a bit mind-boggling, and to this day I'm not really sure how to describe it. This is a paper called Baryta Photographique II matte. I've shown you some Baryta Photographique II prints on previous episodes, and they're the really shiny, smooth gloss. So this is called the same name, but with the word matte on the end. So it's a really, really, really smooth matte. But there are two things here that I struggle with. One, which isn't too much of a struggle, this is really smooth. This is so incredibly smooth, I can't see any texture on it. And the second thing that really is mind-boggling is this is a barium sulfate coated paper. It's got a true layer of true barium sulfate on it. And every time I've seen a barium sulfate paper, it's been shiny, yet this one's matte. So it's another groundbreaking paper from the guys at Canson Infinity. And there's a nuance to it, and it's very difficult to explain. But if you like a paper like Arch 88, the Rolls Royce of papers as I call it, the smooth matte cotton rag, if you print this picture on that and then you print this picture on this, there'll be a slight difference, because this, after all, is something that's very unique. It's a matte paper that's barium sulfate coated, so it behaves in a slightly different way. However, when you see a print on it, it's beautiful. So I would tend to use this where we've got detail, so bags of detail in these pre-dawn chalets here, the beach huts. But if you're shooting macro, you know, the insides of watches or beetles or whatever, or just really detailed scenes, maybe some architectural scenes, maybe wedding photography where you've got a bride in a really, really decorative dress, the smoothness of this is really going to be your friend. And I guess it's just a case of get some, test it and see what you think. It is unusual, that's all I can say. You won't have seen another paper like it. So it's really nice to use. It's got a great feel. You know, it's a natural white. And yeah, I think the answer is get some, give it a go and see what you think. It will be slightly different to every other matte paper you've ever used. And that's because it's got this invisible barium sulfate coating. So there's image 3 from autumn. And it's printed on the Baryta Photographique II matte. Oh, and by the way, the red cartridge in the Canon Pro-300 printer, I'm sure helps towards rendering these kind of colours accurately. So it's probably got a little bit more vibrance than it would have if the printer couldn't match those colours. But this is exactly what it looks like on my screen, so it's done a good job of accurately printing things. So there you go, that's image 3 in the autumn episode. That brings us on to image 4. This is another one from my little get-together for my special birthday in Norfolk, and this is Cley Windmill, spelt C-L-E-Y, just to catch us northerners out. So this is Cley Windmill, and we all headed here after going to, I think it was a place called Blakeney, which was by the sea, and there was some yachts and stuff, so we went there, and then we decided to call here. So it's getting on for the end of the day. And we parked up. I was with my wife on this one. We parked up, we walked around some fields, and we came in from this side, and we toddled down here, and we found this little rivulet and the windmill and some grassy stuff here on the right hand side. And the sun was causing quite an issue, as you can see. And these kind of pictures where you've got this really strong sun in play, it's difficult to work with sometimes because it's hard to control. So I've got grad filters coming down to here, soft grads, because obviously I'm trying to not darken the windmill so much, but I want to control this. And I think I've got away with it. You have to accept when you do landscape photography, if you point at the sun, there's only going to be one winner. It isn't going to be you. So to actually control it to this level, I'm quite happy. But because the sun, I could have waited for it to get here, but then it would have been a really dark picture. There would be no light anywhere, and it wouldn't have worked. It would have been drab. So I had to have the sun in play, and it was a case of waiting for it to just get somewhere where I had the light, but I could control it to some extent. But if I get away with it, I like shots like this. I like the tobacco colour that it seems to cast everywhere. Compositionally, it's quite straightforward. We've got the windmill here almost on a third. And then we've made sure that we've brought in some of the river stream down here and plenty of these colours in the grasses, and then finishing off with this sort of lit area on this other corner. But the overall tobacco colour works really well with this. And at the time it seems hard work, but if you can control that light at capture, when you get it back on the computer, a little bit of tweaking with the highlights and the shadows, and this is the result. So I really like the picture. And it was a question of what to use really when it came to print it. And this picture, I've decided to use the Arch 88 again, the smooth matte cotton rag from Canson Infinity. It really is just a pleasure to use if you need a matte paper. So again, to me, this is quite a painterly little image. You know, it could have been painted by one of the Dutch masters, but there is a painterliness to it. But I wanted to, you know, kind of get it on paper that took it away from a traditional photograph with its shiny finish, and just try and give it another sense of being as like a photographic painting, I guess. So the Arch 88 is matte, yet we've got this amazing ability to deal with contrast. Great tonal range, beautiful. The result is smooth, remember, because it's a smooth matte, an ultra smooth matte, and it's just led in the detail of this windmill and the tiles on the roof, and each of these grasses just jump out. But the result is, if you want to move away, I've said it many times, you want to move away from just traditional photographic finishes and go for something with your photography that just comes at it from a slightly different angle, then consider matte. And it's these kind of images that you'll always see me consider matte. You know, so something a little bit more painterly, which I guess happens quite a lot at dawn and dusk, if you think about it, because we've got the sun at very low angles, so we get these nice conditions more often than not. So matte papers, I now use them 50% of the time, 50-50. It used to be 75% gloss. It's now at least 50-50, and maybe even I use more matte than shiny these days. So there you go, that's image number 4 in the autumn episode, the Cley Windmill. this is the final image from the autumn episode of Series 3, 4 Seasons in Print. And this is a lovely little picture called, I'll have to look it up, Sea Stacks, Llyn Peninsula. So this is in Wales, near Snowdonia. I was with a friend, we went to suss out Snowdonia in the week. That didn't work. It's such a big place with so many photographic opportunities. We worked hard and we were up every morning and stayed out every day till late, and saw quite a bit of it. Didn't see much of it in the right light. But yeah, there's worse places to go with your camera, that's all I'll say. So I would like to go back again and learn it a little bit more. Just take me a while to learn areas because they're so big, and you know, you go back to the same, I know you can go back to the same place time and time again and make totally different shots. But when you first start going to a place, you just start to learn what's there, learn the shapes, then you figure out the light, and then you start to get a sense and a feel of what it can give you. So I've been once, but I was lucky enough to make some nice pictures. And this is an interesting little monochrome picture that we made just along the coast, down the coast from where we were staying, just under Llandudno. And we found these stacks at a place called Trefor. Trefor, I'm sticking with Trefor. Anyway, so we've got these little sea stacks here and the cliffs, and again we've got this heavy sky that happened to have this natural vignette going on, some light here but dark everywhere else, and we've got these rocks here that kind of push you into the picture where you're met with all this jiggedy jaggedy stuff going on in the middle. So nice composition, nice powerful. Again, we've got the sea, we can see the sea heat on this one. It's not a long exposure this time, it's a standard shot. And for this one I wanted to test one of the new papers from the guys at St Cuthbert's Mill down at Somerset in Wells. This is the Somerset Enhanced Velvet 330 gram paper. So this is the black and white picture that I've made of it for this episode. This is a nice paper to handle. It's very smooth. It's natural white but quite a bright white. So there's nothing in there that's going to upset your pictures from an archival point of view. But very, very smooth surface. So again, when you're looking at the detail in these kind of rocks, it's really fantastic how it renders those really, really clear. But it's the ability, just like with the other new one, the Somerset watercolour, the ability of this one, the Velvet, to work with black, especially with the black from the matte ink cartridge in the Pro-300. It's absolutely beautiful. So we've got some really dark areas here, and we've got some really light areas. But the result is a nice contrasty punchy image on a matte paper. Remember, the big benefit about matte, if I do this, there's never a reflection. So if you're ever printing your work for display, maybe it's for a competition that's being judged, or maybe it's for an exhibition where you're hoping to sell work, or maybe it's for your own house. If you want to see it from any angle looking perfect, then matte paper is the only way you're going to do it. So I said in just a few seconds ago, I said that I'm using matte paper now 50-50 or maybe a bit more. Every time I talk on these videos and I say what I've just said to you guys about, you know, no reflections and you can see it from anywhere, there is a part of me that thinks, well, why don't we all just use matte? Especially now that we've got matte papers that can show blacks. But then there's a little bit of part of me that comes back and says, well, photography traditionally is a glossy thing. Photographs used to be shiny. And I do like that traditional look. So I think that's why I use Platin Fibre Rag and Baryta Prestige, Arch 88, BFK Reeve. They're 4, 2 matte, 2 shiny. I use them all the time. So it probably is about a 50-50 split, but there is a real good argument for just using matte, I think, especially from a display point of view, which is what most of it is used for. So that's the end of the autumn episode. So thank you for watching. The next episode, the final one in this series, is winter, and that will be available in about a week's time. So thank you for now.